first get to the big topic, Irina, that is the Blinken's trips to Israel, and CIA chief Bill Burns also trip to the Middle East. How do you see? And at the other side, Saudi Defense Minister, he was in the US. How do you see all these trips, and what can the world, especially someone sitting in India, can make sense of what this is all about?
Well, I'll explain what the trips were about, then I'll explain why they were a complete failure and what should have been said instead. Uh,
Right.
Burns' trip was slightly better than Blinken because they were focused on more logistical issues of security cooperation. Um, Given the whole situation with the war and the increasing number of proxies entering the field. At the end of the day, however, Burns is not a decision maker. He can only adjust the strategy of intelligence gathering, which up until now has been a failure on US side as much as on Israel side, for the reason um, that US has actually stopped the monitoring of Hamas for the past several years, having decided that Hamas is a local issue, that it presents no direct danger to the United States, and essentially it would be a waste of resources to focus on it, which is surprising because the agency has a very big personnel. It has over 100,000 employers, and you would think that at least a small group could be dedicated to Hamas, but apparently that was not the case. So now there's an effort to fix the gap, to coordinate actions, to coordinate responses, and it's difficult to do in the fog of war. But that sort of visit is to be expected and should probably have happened a lot sooner. In terms of Blinken, however, that was a complete failure. He has been playing shuttle diplomacy between Israel and various Middle Eastern states. On the one hand, the administration claims victories in the sense of getting Israel to agree to a number of humanitarian gestures, and even now, Israel stated it is considering short humanitarian pauses. It has allowed exit of Palestinian refugees to humanitarian corridors in the south, and there's also been a corridor for foreign nationals uh, leaving Gaza and entering Egypt for treatment. And now the latest is that there's been an arrangement with Turkey and Egypt to transport cancer patients from the hospital in Egypt to Turkey. Israel has also allowed Jordan to bring to airdrop humanitarian aid, and the Emiratis are also now providing medical treatment, building a hospital inside Gaza. So, from that sense, the administration can claim credit for going a very long way to provide civilians in Gaza with assorted forms of humanitarian relief. But they have failed to secure the release of hostages. According to Qatar, which has been an intermediary in the process, there would need to be a ceasefire of some sort for the hostages to be released. Israel, on the other hand, demands that the hostages to be released before there is any comprehensive stop to hostilities. Israel has gone quite far into Gaza. It has divided the area by half. It has destroyed a number of tunnels and thousands of terrorists belonging to Hamas. It has killed a number of commanders, but so far has failed to secure some of its leading targets, such as Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Ad-Daif, who are nowhere to be found. Um, it even encouraged the locals to try to kill them in order to save civilian lives. It is approaching the Shifa hospital where Hamas has its headquarters, and it has surrounded Gaza City. So, from a territorial perspective, it has made a lot of progress, but there seems to be no end to hostilities. And Blinken has attempted to persuade Israel to put a stop to all of this, to allow the securing the release of the hostages, to provide further humanitarian relief, and to also get other Arab states on board. But so far, with no success, Israel does not believe it serves its military and security agenda to put a stop. Furthermore, mm, there's been evidence that from the West Bank, Judea, and Samaria, as it's known in Israel, the areas under the Palestinian Authority control, there is a potential effort to replicate the Hamas attack with at least 1,000 trained terrorists looking to breach the borders, to breach the divisions, and enter Israel proper.
Right,
So
right,
Netanyahu has asked the army to prepare for that. But Blinken, now I'll explain the reason why Blinken has failed to get attention from anybody. With Israel, it's pretty obvious that they view any stop to combat as an opportunity for Hamas to rearm and reload, as every Iranian and Muslim Brotherhood proxy in the region has done during conflicts, even ones unrelated to Israel. Any humanitarian pauses essentially an invitation for the fighters to secure additional weapons, aid, and to regroup. But the Arab states have been pushing for the ceasefire as a condition to any sort of expansion of diplomatic efforts. The reality, however, is that Blinken had not brought anything to the table from the diplomatic perspective. He has promised on behalf of President Biden to push for a two-state solution, but that sort of discussion is clearly premature during this while the fighting is still ongoing and while the situation is unresolved. The transition plan that Israel discusses may include potential long term control of Israelis over Gaza, which would be, on the one hand, unacceptable to the Arab states, on the other hand, expensive and difficult for Israel, and possibly not actually resolve anything because at the end of the day, the war is as much political and ideological as it is military. And the biggest central issue to all of this is not the Palestinian state, which, by the way, has been rejected by Palestinian governments in much more peaceful times than now. Um, the biggest issue is that nobody's talking about the elephant in the room, which is Iran. And the fact that Iran is calling the shots not only on Hamas hostilities, but on Houthis who had been firing missiles at Israel, at the US, who have been attacking Saudi Arabia multiple times, and Iraqi and Syrian militias, which have attacked the US bases in their respective countries for over 40 times now, injuring in many cases severely at least 45 members of the US military. Until the
right.
status of Iran is actually brought up and discussed, I don't really see how anyone in the Arab world will take this shuttle diplomacy effort seriously. Their security and economic interests are simply not being met by anything Blinken is bringing to the table.
Absolutely, absolutely. Irina, from an outsider's perspective, what do we understand from this? What does the US want? We all are hearing many voices, and US and Israel, after Biden's visit, all this, if their communication is so good, why does the US have to travel again and again to Israel and to other nations around it? Is it such a difficult part of them to lay down something concrete and move forward? Or is it just much more of optics, posturing, and giving a chance for other countries also, that, okay, you keep on making some noises, we are with you, let Israel do what it wants, let the way it wants to. But actually, is it moving towards any concrete solution to this issue? Does the world is fearing it might lead to escalation of this crisis, but nobody is getting a clear picture where this goes is what does US want. Israel, we know it's a tough situation, it's a tough posturing at the moment, but the humanitarian crisis, more than 10,000 people dead, a lot of, even among the European Union, there have been now several voices out there. How do we understand in terms of solution? The world wants to see a solution, not a stalemate.
Well, the problem is this administration has no strategy for settling the conflict. They can't force Israel to drop the issue before the military goals achieved, and the military goals are not unreasonable. Even President Biden, that he supports the idea of relieving Hamas of its control over Gaza. Secretary Blinken today described the way Hamas holds uses civilians as human shields. He went into great detail discussing why there are so many civilian casualties, which are unavoidable because Hamas has completely infiltrated every civilian institution. And I think there is first of all a split within the administration as to what to do, and second a very awkward effort to balance different interests between allowing Israel to secure its borders from terrorism and to put an end to Hamas stronghold, and then to respond to all the critics pushing for a ceasefire, and there's a lot of them, including in the United States. There have been mass rallies from all sorts of people. um, some of them are pro Hamas voices, and some of them are assorted human rights activists who may be well informed, but they're loud, they're vocal, and they're very visible. And of course, there's some pressure from Europe and from around the world as well. There is an effort to continue to shield Iran from accountability, and this is why we haven't seen any concrete military response to all the regional escalations. But we have seen increasing number of visible deterrents, such as the nuclear submarine that has just been transferred to the Middle East. There's a concern about China. The President Biden is preparing for the meeting with Xi Jinping and trying to settle some of the tensions, just as China is apparently getting more involved in the Middle East in a more visible way. So there is a lot going on, and of course the Arab states have not been quiet either. There's been an mass exodus of diplomats from a number of countries from Israel, and the Israeli diplomats have also been kicked out of a couple of places, and Israel has also had to um, withdraw a number of ambassadors for his security reasons from several countries. um, so there's been a lot of political controversy that the administration is trying to navigate, and the problem is it's trying to please too many interests with no real real next step vision of where it's all going. There's no plan for the transition from Hamas rule to something else, no plan to put an end to the financial support for Hamas from sources outside the Western world, no plan to deal with the Arab states or with the growing internal polarization over the issue. The administration is also suffering from political problems. Recent polls are showing a split in the Democrat fold over the Israel-Hamas war, with many of the Muslim and Arab constituents increasingly dissatisfied with the administration, and because they see that there's insufficient support for the Palestinian cause, as they claim it. The Jewish constituents are not happy with the response for the opposite reason, and so now and former President Trump appears to be gaining support in five key swing states. So we see both a policy and a political problem, and we see a very academic approach to all of that. There are no concrete deals being brokered. There are no political. There's no talk of political leveraging of any interest in order to gain some sort of a concrete solution. And the reason why there is no solution is because there are no proposals, there's no vision, and nobody really knows what to do. Everything we're seeing so far is completely reactionary.
Absolutely, absolutely. At least, even if they may have something in their minds, it is not getting reflected. At least in this part of the world, we are not trying understanding what exactly is happening. And is if in this state of
We are in
confusion,
the
let's
same
now go
boat.
to right, right, right. So, Irina, as from one confusion, we're still trying to make sense of that. Let's move on to the Ukraine thing.